am in Italy at Mugello at a MotoGP circuit, one of the most daunting right-hand circuits in the world. My name's Alan Kempster and I'm 52 years old. I'm from Australia and I'm a double amputee, and I'm here to race motorcycles this weekend. In 1990 I had a motorcycle accident. It was basically a head-on side swipe with a vehicle on the wrong side of the road, and that caused the traumatic amputation of my right arm and right leg. At this scene of the accident, they pumped around 9 litres of plasma into my body. Then they transported me to hospital, where I spent over a week in intensive care. I spent another further 3 weeks in hospital. And after that, I spent around 12 months in a rehabilitation centre, learning to walk and eat and dress myself and all those sort of things. Basically, after my accident, I didn't even think I'd be able to walk again, let alone do sports. After my accident, I took up water skiing, and I represented Australia for over 10 years and skied in 5 world championships all around the world. I won 3 of those world championships. There was still something missing in my life. I still wasn't happy with what I'd achieved, and it was motorcycles. So around 4 or 5 years ago, I decided to go out and get a motorcycle and have a go at racing again. Within around 6 laps of my first ride, I had my left knee scraping on the ground, and I knew I was back, and this is where I wanted to be. As I went out to my first race meeting, and I took my bike up to scrutineering to get checked. Now, they had a look at my bike, and first thing they noticed on my bike that there wasn't a throttle or a brake on the right-hand side. And they told me that you can't bring your motorcycle up to scrutineering if it doesn't have any brakes on it. And I pointed to the left-hand side and I said, the throttle's here, the brakes are here. And they sort of looked and scratched their head. And while they were doing that, I actually pulled my leathers out of my bag. And my leathers have only got 1 arm and 1 leg. And then they looked, and then they really shook their head and just thought, what is going on here? And then, as I said, I went out in my first race and every official at the track had their eyes on me. I went out, rode around, they seemed to be happy with my qualifying times and the way I controlled the bike and everything else. And then I went out in the first race and I won that, so they knew I could ride. When I first applied for a licence, I tried to get in contact with the clubs in Australia and what have you, and all the officials, and they basically just didn't believe that I wanted to go out and race. So I ended up filling out all the forms, and on the form for your licence it said, do you have a disability that stops you from riding a motorcycle? So of course I ticked no, because why would anyone want to go out and race if they couldn't even ride a motorcycle? So that was my main problem. One of the questions I was asked by the officials was, what happens if I crash and break my arm or leg? Well, I told them that I've got 50% chance less of breaking an arm and leg than anyone else. I haven't had too many problems with crashes. I've never ever caused a red flag in a crash or anything else like that, so most of my crashes have been run-offs, and they've been off the track, so it's been pretty good. In Australia, there aren't many disabled riders racing. One is around 3,000 to 4,000 kilometres away from me. The other one is about 2,000 or 3,000 kilometres away from me. So all my racing is done with able-bodied competitors. When I first started racing, they didn't really trust me out on the track. They thought I may have been dangerous, and they gave me plenty of room. But once I started passing them, they realised that they had to make a bit of a move themselves. I do know that a lot of the riders actually improved their times once I started racing, because they don't like getting beaten by a disabled guy, and I still go out and give the guys a hard time. We rub shoulders and touch bearings, and now I'm classed as an equal competitor. In Australia, I've been racing a 400 Kawasaki, and I've just moved up to a GSXR Suzuki 600. I've also raced my 400 over at New Zealand, where I raced in the Burt Munro Classic. It's 4 races in 4 days on 4 different circuits. It's an amazing event, and I actually brought home the Burt Munro family trophy. In September last year, I was invited down to Phillip Island for the MotoGP launch, and I got the chance to ride on track with Mick Doohan. That was an amazing experience, riding on the track with Mick Doohan. It was also one of the scariest times I've ever been on the track. You're out there riding with 5 times world champion, and I didn't actually want to mistake and knock him off and end his career. One of my problems at Phillip Island was I just couldn't get under the 2-minute barrier. And with Mick took me out, he followed me around, and I followed him for a couple of laps, and we ended up taking 3.5 seconds off my PB down at Phillip Island, and I ended up with a 1:56.5 that day. So it was an amazing experience just to drop 3.5 seconds a lap just by following 5 times world champion Mick Doohan. We don't really have too many financial sponsors in Australia, so most of my racing I actually do get on Facebook, and we ask for donations through Facebook and other media. So most of my racing is paid by donations. We get donations ranging from $5 to $500, and some of my favourite donations are the $5 ones. It's people who can't afford it, but they still put in that $5 just so I can go out and race, you know. It's hard to get a lot of sponsors in the motorcycle trade, such as leathers and helmets and things like that, but RST Leathers have come out and helped me out with leathers, review helmets. So sponsors now realise that disabled motorcycle racing is getting a lot of coverage. So hopefully we'll start picking up a few sponsors. Some of the modifications I've done to my bike, I've got a left-hand throttle which twists the normal way. I have the throttle, the clutch, the brake, steering and hang on. So it's only 5 things I have to do with my left hand. The other modifications I've done to the bike is on my foot. I've actually got the gear lever, and I've also got the rear brake. When I actually start from the pits, we have the bike on the stand. I hop on the bike, we start it up, I put it into gear, then they drop me off the stand, and then I take off. One of the things I do as I'm coming down the straight to the start line, I just check my leathers and everything else, make sure my helmet's done, my visor's down. But the main thing I have to do is make sure I'm in first gear when I pull up. I just sit on the bike like normal. I rev the bike to around 8,000 RPM. When the lights go out, you ease the clutch and just float the front wheel, and away you go. When I first started racing, I only went out to race to satisfy my own need. Motorcycle racing is in my blood, and it's hard to get it out. But once I started racing, I've become a bit of an inspiration to people all around the world. Because of my disability, the right arm and right leg amputation, and I don't ride without a prosthesis, some of my photos, they shock people when they see the photos of me, and they go, how the hell does he do that? And it just inspires people. When they look at my photos, they look at me and go, well, look at him, and he can get on with his life, and I've just got a sore finger and I'm complaining. So it gives people inspiration when they see my photos. To be invited over here to Mugello to race in the world's first all-disabled race, it's an amazing experience to take part in this event. I live in Australia. It was a 30-hour flight to get here, but just to be part of history. And it's amazing to see all the other disabled riders here this weekend. There are many disabilities, amputees, there's blind, there's deaf, there's all sorts of disabilities out here today. And it's just amazing to see the way some of the guys cope and the way they set up their bikes. Everyone's disability is different. They all have preferences on the way they like to ride. Some like to ride with prosthesis, and I'm the only one in the world that likes to ride without a prosthesis. I find it's much safer. I can move around on the bike a lot easier, and I'm still quite capable of controlling the bike with one arm at high speed. My main competition is myself. When I go out and race, I like to improve my lap times. But I've realised that I've become an inspiration around the world to many people. And I just like to go out and show people that anything's possible if you set your mind to it. Just go out and follow your dreams and passion. I can't really afford to race that often, but I can't afford to stop, because if I stop, other people will stop.